today we're putting the entirety of Midnights in chronological order. Now, at first I thought this was going to be easy because in my mind, for some reason, I was like, oh, Midnights is a short album. It's not going to be as bad as like Tortured Poets Department and the Anthology, which we did last time, and that was long. It turns out that there are 22 tracks on this album. Now, it isn't as long as the Anthology, but I was prepared for a nice short 20-minute video, and instead we're going to be going through my 50 pages of notes that I have right here. So buckle down. We're gonna start with the first 13 tracks, and then we're gonna go by whatever track I felt like putting there, because to be honest, I lost track of the song numbers a long time ago with all the additions once again. So if we take a look at the timeline for this video, I've just decided to go by the album release dates. We have Debut 2006, Fearless 2008, and so on. We have one date here that says December 2021. You'll find out why that's there later, but I felt the need to include that. Then we have the release of Midnights in October of 2022. And now Midnights was supposed to be a conceptual album that was like 13 sleepless nights throughout Taylor's life. These are songs that I'm assuming are somewhat dispersed throughout her life, and so I'm putting them on the timeline based on not when they were written, but when, like, what exact specific situation or feeling or moment she was writing about in that song. Okay, starting off with Lavender, Haze. She says, I find it dizzying, they're bringing up my history, but you weren't even listening, and I've been under scrutiny, you handle it beautifully, all this shit is new to me. Immediately, this kind of gives flashbacks to certain Reputation lyrics, like my babies fly like a jet stream, high above the whole scene, loves me like I'm brand new, kind of indicating that this person doesn't hold any past or media biases against her. She also has the lyric, my reputation's never been worse, so you must like me for me, which also comes to mind. Reputation was obviously the period in her life when she was under the most media scrutiny, and although this could be talking about another period of her life, this is most likely talking about her 6-year relationship that she wrote most of Reputation about, which happened right as she was getting canceled. So Joe's stoicism to the media influence was a big aspect, and I think that's reflected in a lot of Reputation songs. Prior to these songs, there weren't really any lyrics to my knowledge where she talked about her partner handling the media well. It was mostly songs about the exact opposite, actually, where her relationships were dug further into their respective graves by the press. She also says, I feel the lavender haze creeping up on me, which remains a mysterious lyric. But to me, it doesn't necessarily scream honeymoon phase like it does to some people, especially when the rest of the lyrics as well as the music video are taken into consideration. The music video is much more focused on her rather than her relationship, and she has this dark cloud over her at times. It seems like the premise is Taylor being moody and melancholic, but then having someone very stable that handles her moods, the press, and everything in between, which is backed up by the lyrics, you don't read into my melancholia, which would usually honestly be a red flag. Like, the person you're in a relationship with doesn't care that you're sad. What the hell? What do you mean? But here it's written as though at the time this was a good thing for her. Someone mentioned that her love interest is also the weatherman in the music video, meaning that he observes her moods but doesn't try to combat them or fix them. Overall, seems like wanting to stay in the lavender haze refers to wanting to stay hidden away and be with her partner, which is definitely reminiscent of when she was hiding with Joe in 2017. However, we do have the lyric, all they keep asking me is if I'm gonna be your bride, which would probably be referring to a relationship that's, been going on for a minute. So given what was being said about that relationship in the tabloids, aka the constant when are they going to get engaged, this seems like it would be more around 2019 to 2020-ish. So I think I'm gonna put it around that period. But it really does seem like the song sources from a time period of multiple years where she felt safe with him and, like I said, actually wanted to stay hidden away. And since we got some highly suspicious songs during the folklore era about daydreaming, about other people, and I know that's fictional, but people have to take inspiration from somewhere. And it didn't look like she was actually enjoying being locked away at that point, like with COVID and everything, it wasn't a choice. And in the song, it definitely seems like a choice, if you get what I mean. So I'm gonna say 2017 to 2019. On the later side of that, probably. We're gonna go with like, yeah, Above Lover for now is where it's gonna sit, but I'm gonna rearrange these a little bit later, probably. Okay, moving on to Maroon, which is a very widely debated track. Some people think that Maroon is a darker version of Red, and most of the Red album was written about Jake Gyllenhaal by transitive property. This means that the song is about Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, I can't reiterate enough, I don't actually know who Taylor writes her songs about, so maybe she wrote a sweet one after Red about him, I don't know. But it seems to me like she didn't have the fondest memories of him, judging by the Red songs, if we're purely going off of vibes. But the vibe of the song seems to be a relationship that was once bright red, but then the love grew into something, like into a darker shade of maroon, whatever you take that to mean. That's my interpretation. Taylor references rust growing between telephones, so maybe a sign of that love dwindling out. It could also mean that the love was maturing, maybe both, I don't know. But if we're not gonna go off of vibes and off of evidence, let's consider the lyric, "Your roommate's cheap-ass screw-top rosé." At the time of their relationship, Jake was an established actor, and she even described him as having a $1 million couch in Red. This man did not have a roommate. He owned a house since 2005, and also for the same reasons, I don't think he was drinking cheap screw-top rosé. Now, what other specific lyrics do we have in the song? Well, we have the one I was dancing with in New York, "No Shoes," accompanied by a video of Taylor and Harry doing exactly that. This video was apparently filmed when and because a lot of people around were surprised at their new relationship and how much affection they were displaying. So it's easy to frame this as one of her key memories of that relationship that she could then source inspiration from years later, since Harry like literally picked her up and brought her onto the stage, and this was likely during their honeymoon period. Before we go further, let me just say, also, when Taylor mentions specific things in her songs, a lot of the time she knows these things are accessible to the public and that Swifties are going to find them. Now, obviously, not always, but a great example of this are her songs about Harry from 1989, where she references a blue dress on a boat, which was clearly referencing the photo that the press had an absolute field day with because it was believed to be taken right after her breakup with Harry. Similarly, she put the airplane necklace in the Out of the Woods music video. That was not a personal message to Harry. She knew that there were photos of them wearing that necklace, and I think she might have done the same thing here. For a sanity check, let's see if Harry had a roommate around the end of 2012. At the beginning of 2012, he seemingly lived with his bandmates, and then at some point during that year, he went to live in Ben Winston's attic for 18 months. Granted, he was on tour for a lot of time, so he wasn't really living in a particular place, so the lyric is probably describing one of his bandmates, although it could be Winston, less roommate vibes. But the point is, a situation definitely feels possible where Harry was living in close proximity with other people, and he and Taylor took this person's cheap screw-top rosé, and for the sake of lyricism, she called this person a roommate. There's also another lyric that can point to Harry in the song, which is "The mark you saw on my collarbone." Obviously, it could be referring to anyone, but in this context, she seems to be saying this casually. But if she was in a stable relationship with this person, this would definitely not be casual and would imply some form of infidelity. However, given the fact that her relationship with Harry, from what we know from both the press and the 1989 lyrics, was on and off, this makes sense if she's talking about him. Q, "I heard you've been out and about with some other girl. I've been there too a few times," from Style. It's quite feasible that the song was just reflecting on their relationship and how it fizzled out. So I'm gonna put this right in the middle of 2012 and 2013, maybe around like here. Okay, I'm gonna try and speed things up a bit. We're moving on to Anti-Hero. These first few tracks just had a lot of background to them. So Anti-Hero is clearly about self-doubt and being like, what if I really am the problem and it's not other people, it's just me. Specifically, it touches on not only fan and media opinion on her, but especially on her personal connections. At one point she says, "I have this dream, my daughter-in-law kills me for the money. She thinks I left them in the will," which also hints at insecurity that some people in her personal life may have monetary motives for being close to her. More generally though, as I said, this is about worrying if you're actually in the wrong and everyone eventually leaving you as a result of it. This was likely sourced from this emotion being felt over many years. However, if I had to pick a year, it would probably be 2016, right around when she was getting canceled, because that feeling definitely would have been heightened due to the media outlash. We know Taylor is susceptible to this. When Kanye took the trophy from her during the AMA Awards, she said later that at first she thought that the audience was booing at her and not at him. So I'm gonna leave it around the cancellation era for now. Moving on to Snow on the Beach, which I have covered extensively prior. Its messaging is one of the clearest on Midnights. If you look at the first verse, Taylor says, "One night a few moons ago, I saw flecks of what could have been lights, but it might have just been you passing by, unbeknownst to me." She later says, "Weird but fucking beautiful, you wanting me tonight feels impossible." And finally, "It's fine to fake it till you make it till you do, till it's true." What can we take away from these lyrics? This is about a person that she has been seeing out and about, passing by, and has perhaps been fantasizing about, hence the fake it till you make it. And this thing that she has been fantasizing about finally happening. Does this seem familiar? Because it should. This is essentially a toned down version of what would happen if Guilty as Sin and Fresh Out the Slammer were merged into a single song, in my opinion. And so this could be about her regaining her connection with Matty Healy, who she started dating after Joe, whilst in that long-term relationship. If the person who had been a what if in your mind for many years had surfaced and then worked on the Midnights album with you, it's not insane to imagine writing such a song about the interaction, whether some things are exaggerated or not. Maybe she didn't know for sure that he wanted her. She just kind of felt this way, felt the vibes or something. And we know they have a history from 2014. And we know he was on Taylor's mind a lot from a lot of other songs, so I think this is pretty feasible. This is backed up by the space references in this song as well, which are matched by Down Bad, which was clearly written about him, only in Snow on the Beach, he's kind of this extraterrestrial object passing by her, and when he finally lands, she's incredibly happy, whereas in Down Bad, she's kind of referring to him as this alien that abducted her in the sense that he showed her a whole new world, but it turns out he was just experimenting on her and then got straight back onto his UFO and left. So I'm gonna put this track all the way like down here because I think she was in the studio like recording Midnights, and that's when she and Matty kind of reconnected, and I think that was way closer to like the actual album release date. Moving on to You're On Your Own Kid, to me this feels like a summary of her life as well as a summary of the album. The lyrics, "Summer went away, still the yearning stays. I play it cool with the best of them. I wait patiently. He's gonna notice me. It's okay, we're the best of friends," which seems reminiscent of like a high school summer fling, like in Tim McGraw. The aspect of being friends with people that you like doesn't seem it would be very common after high school, especially, well, that's not true, but you know what I mean, especially since she says, "I didn't choose this down, I dream of getting out," implying also an earlier phase in her life. She also says, "Something different bloomed writing in my room. I play my songs in the parking lot. I'll run away," which also indicates her going away from the small town and gaining fame, etc. Then later we obviously have a list of the sacrifices she has made along the way and realizing that in the end she'll be alone, but it's actually fine because she's gotten to where she is today alone as well. Because of the initial references to young love and moving away from home and working her way through the industry, I'm just gonna put this one in the debut era as the first song in the timeline, but just know that I'm calling this the summary song. Maybe I'll place it last as well. Moving on to Midnight Rain, the lyric, "My town was a wasteland full of cages, full of fences, pageant queens, and big pretenders," has similar vibes to some of the lyrics in You're On Your Own Kid, which we just went over, and also has the lyric, "Chasing that fame, he stayed the same, all of me changed like midnight." So this might actually be referring to a relationship in her hometown back from the days when she was just starting to get traction, but she wanted to get out into the spotlight and chase that fame, while the other person clearly didn't share the same goals and wanted more stability or a more traditional life. Maybe it's about the same high school boyfriend that she wrote to McGraw about, and about leaving her idealized notions of marrying someone, like she sang about in 15, behind, as well as abandoning the notion of having a normal family by getting famous. Some Tom Hiddleston rumors circulated around this. since she says sometimes we all get just what we wanted, and he finally got engaged in 2022, right around when the Midnights album was being written. He and Taylor were also papped on the beach back when they were dating, so fans noticed the lyric jumping off things in the ocean and connected it to that. But her and Tom only had a summer fling, which doesn't seem like enough time to be discussing marriage, first of all, even though she didn't meet his family. And it also likely didn't produce the lyric holiday peppermint candy. So I'm gonna put this around 2006 as well, since it doesn't seem like the partner in the song was any kind of famous and just wanted a family, and fame conflicted with that. And all the relationships that fans are aware of after she moved away from home have been people of celebrity status. Maybe that's a coincidence, and there were some of non-celebrity statuses that she deliberately kept hidden. But yeah, unless that is the case, that is going in 2006. Moving on to Question. This track samples Out of the Woods at the start of the song, so some people think it references Harry. But maybe, and hear me out, this was actually meant to reference the entire 1989 era as a whole, which would make sense in the context of Matty Healy, who the lyrics match better, and who she met around that time, and we know now connected with on a level that made her think about him for years. The overall theme of the song is wanting to ask a past lover a question about whether they meant to leave things the way they did or something along those lines. Besides the lyric, "Can I ask you a question?" most lyrics in the song are like ridiculously specific, especially the lines, "She was on your mind with some dickhead guy that you saw that night, but you were on something, it was one drink after another, fucking politics and gender roles, and you're not sure, and I don't know." Actually thinking about it, the chorus is more specific, but still, that's a specific lyric. And while Harry may have seen her out and about with someone, this made fans think of a very specific night, the Brits after party, which happened a few months after Taylor and Matty seemingly stopped talking in the public eye and their fling was over. Matty was in attendance, as well as Calvin Harris. Taylor hit it off with Calvin and later got into a relationship with him. Furthermore, Matty is open about having been a heavy drug user in the past, and Harry did not and still does not have this reputation at all. And politics and gender roles could easily be referencing the conflict that sprung up between Matty and Taylor, where an article was released where Matty said he didn't want to date Taylor because it would be too emasculating, which was then taken out of context and he had to apologize. But in the many apologies and many interviews that asked him about Taylor, one could kind of read between the lines and see that a major reason of why they didn't date was because Matty was indeed scared of the media presence around her and how that would overshadow him, as well as her lifestyle in general with all the bodyguards and the paparazzi and whatnot. When he was seen with her, a news outlet got his name wrong and they said Matt, and he kind of lost it at this. Every time he was asked about whether or not they were or had dated in an interview, the sentiment was usually unfortunately not, and kind of switched from, oh, it wasn't explored, to it wouldn't have worked out, which are actually two very different things. But feel free to disregard everything that I have said and just take a look at this video of Taylor's speech right before playing Question. I'm sure a lot of you know about this one, when she had just gotten together with Matty in 2023.
I don't know. It's not just a tour, it's like, I don't know, I just sort of feel like my life finally feels like it makes sense. And so I thought I'd play this song, which brings me really a lot of happy memories. Good girl, sad boy.
Did that convince you? Did it? Okay, we're putting it right here in year 1989. Moving on to Vigilante Shit. This track definitely has a Reputation era vibe to it, and there's not that many specific lyrics that point to anyone in particular, but the theme is clear. It's about getting revenge, and it's suspected to be primarily about Scooter Braun, who she was actively getting revenge on by re-recording her masters. He was also the suspected target of the lyric "The Master of Spin has a couple side flings. Good wives always know she should be mad, should be scathing like me, but no one likes a mad woman," from Folklore. The affair is purely speculative, however, Vigilante Shit also covers the topic of an affair, which is a suspicious coincidence. This track could also just generally be about all the people that have stabbed her in the back, but since she has many of those types of tracks, and yet this is one of the few that is specifically referencing a male throughout it, we're going to go with 2020/2021, which is when Scooter sold her music, not to her, and then got divorced. Moving on to Bejeweled. Bejeweled seems to be about being ignored and being put in the basement in a relationship, and reminding both yourself and your partner that you in fact can still shine like a jewel. Some people have said that this could be about Calvin Harris, since she was spotted dancing with Tom Hiddleston at the 2016 Met Gala while she was dating Harris. Her dress was also very sparkly, and When I Meet the Band could be referencing the Haze sisters. This was the common theory before she ended her 6-year relationship, but in hindsight, many think this could be about Joe due to the general sentiment on You're Losing Me and So Long London, where it seems like he clocked out of the relationship over time. She often uses some form of baby in her songs to refer to him as well, which she hasn't done in songs about Harris, not that there's a lot of those. It's also noticed that Calvin nearly always wore the same pair of Adidas, so didn't notice you walking all over my peace of mind in the shoes I gave you as a present. Also matches her relationship with Joe better, since it seems like a much more domestic thing to do as well. Like, I don't think people usually give shoes as a present to a person they've been dating for a year. They tend to give meaningful stuff first, like little lockets, maybe watches, etc. I don't know, that's just me. But she also says, I've made you my world, which indicates a more committed relationship, and she essentially moved across the world for Joe at one point, which she also mentioned in Hoax when she said, you know, I left a part of me back in New York. Finally, in the entire context of wanting to sparkle in her relationship with Joe, it also makes more sense, since she significantly stepped out of the public eye when she was with him, while when she was with Calvin, she was at the height of her 1989 popularity. Also, just going off vibes, but I don't know if her relationship with Calvin was memorable enough to be reflecting all these years later, whereas with Harry, she essentially wrote most of an album about him, and Matty and Joe were self-explanatory, as well as people that were older that she had relationships with that were very memorable for bad reasons. So I'm going to place this around 2021/2022, since she couldn't physically go out after quarantine. Maybe didn't because of him, but this could be from earlier as well. Moving on to Labyrinth, I honestly don't think I can even correctly guess what the song is about, never mind who it's about, but I'm gonna try. The lyric, you know how scared I am of elevators, never trust it if it rises fast, it can't last, is one of the clearest lyrics in one of the few, and it indicates that she's afraid of falling for someone too quickly. Yet at the same time, other lyrics indicate that she's trying to get over a heartbreak. It only hurts this much right now was what I was thinking the whole time. I'll be getting over you my whole life. However, she keeps using you throughout the whole song to refer to this person that she's singing about and doesn't switch it up, which she sometimes does. So that indicates that she's saying all these things about the same person, which is where the confusion begins. So we can assume a tumultuous relationship, I guess, that she thought was going down, but the other person turned it right around. We now know that her relationship with Joe was rocky at times, and some fans suspect that there was a breakup that no one actually knew about, which is also somewhat hinted at in The Great War, which we will cover later. This could very well be about someone else, I don't know, but we're gonna go with 2021, and specifically for reasons you will see later. Now, moving on to Karma. Sonically, this is another rap era song, and honestly, this one might actually be inspired by events from that time as well. In 2016, public opinion of Taylor dipped, and she realized it wasn't healthy for her to remain in the spotlight, so she disappeared from the public eye for about a year before returning with her comeback reputation in 2017. In the interim, fans speculated that she had been working on a follow-up album to 1989 that had to be scrapped in the wake of the Kim and Kanye controversy. Fans pointed out Taylor's pretty big aesthetic shift, bleaching her hair and taking on a very particular summery aesthetic with things she posted on Instagram, a move that some thought was going to be her gearing up for a new era. This album came to be known as Karma because in a particular scene in the music video of The Man, the main character was peeing on a subway wall, and the names of some of Taylor's albums were written on that wall along with the word karma, which fans felt was her signaling that there had been this secret work with that name. Anyway, it's giving Reputation vibes, and while it could have been sourced from any period of her life, once again, if I have to place it somewhere, it's going to be in the rap era. After, specifically, I think. Moving on to Sweet Nothing. It was co-written with Joe and seems to fit their relationship to a T, very similar to Lavender Haze. It's about running home to sweet nothings from a partner who is seen as a refuge from all the negative attention and press. But the first verse is strange. I've got no clue what it means. Some people speculate that the pebble is an engagement ring and that the verse was written separately from Joe and was a subtle dig at not having received a proposal yet, which we know was a sensitive topic for Taylor from So Long London and You're Losing Me once again. If this is true, it puts a somewhat negative connotation on the rest of the song. Nevertheless, it remains more or less about the same thing, and I'm gonna put it like, for now, I'm gonna sort these songs more specifically later, but we're gonna put this around like 2020, 2021. Moving on to Mastermind. The white smirk on your face is very reminiscent of He Looks Up, Grinning Like a Devil from Cruel Summer, which is widely believed to be about the summer period where she had a summer fling but wasn't dating Joe, and she thought that she was falling for him harder than he was for her. She first met him at the Met Gala in May, had her relationship troubles with Calvin Harris and Tom Hiddleston, and then started seeing him after the summer. This summer would have indeed given her time to Mastermind. The song also offers commentary on her being a mastermind and working hard when it comes to her career in the bridge, but primarily it maintains the very romantic theme, so I'm gonna put it in 2016, before Anti-Hero, because after the press started going haywire, I don't think she was worried about him anymore. Okay, now we're done with the main 13 tracks, so I'm gonna go a little faster and not like lyrically analyze as much. I'd also like to point out that I definitely probably have missed something, but these are just theories that I have, or mainly that I have heard about, that seem to fit these songs best. So I'm just putting this out there. This is by no means the official timeline. Moving on to The Great War. This track was written somewhere between April and October of 2021, and this is about a conflict where she almost loses her lover and ends up promising that if they survive the conflict, she won't ever sabotage the relationship again. She portrays herself as the culprit in the song, causing the conflict and slamming curtains closed, while her partner draws up good faith treaties. She has only had one long-term relationship, so I genuinely just don't think there was time to have conflict of this scale with these stakes with anyone but Joe Alwyn. Also, Broken in Blue refers to bruises, but is also Joe's symbolic color in a lot of songs, which is something to keep in mind. It's also very similar to Labyrinth, and so The Great War is gonna go, it was written sometime in 2021, and it would make sense that the Labyrinth kind of was made around this time as well. Which went first? I don't know. I feel like Labyrinth seems like a more like emotional in the moment song, whereas The Great War seems to be looking back on this conflict more, so I'm just gonna switch them around like that for now. Moving on to Bigger Than the Whole Sky. It's about a huge loss, not necessarily a romantic one. It's seemingly about not getting to see how someone will turn out to be when she says, I'm never gonna meet what could have been, would have been, what should have been you, which created theories that this was about the loss of a child or a miscarriage or literally the death of anybody close. Not necessarily something Taylor experienced, perhaps one of her friends, perhaps her, we don't know. It could also generally be exploring grief, a band losing something before it reaches its full potential. But then again, Taylor likes to write about specifics. But this goes in the box of shame. I'm not gonna try and put this one anywhere on the timeline. I can't even speculate. Next up is Paris, and it's about literally locking yourself with your partner in a room, metaphorically or physically, and pretending that you're in Paris and that the press isn't watching you. PR was a huge topic for her relationship with Harry Styles on 1989. I Know Places We Won't Be Found seems like a darker version of the song. It just says, hear the vultures circling dark clouds. Cheap Wine is also mentioned here, just like in Maroon, which ties back to Harry. Additionally, Let the Only Flashing Lights Be the Tower at Midnight seems to be a very specific reference to her and Harry's highly publicized New Year's kiss on New Year's Eve in Times Square, where there was literally paparazzi crowding all around them. Could be about other relationships where PR was a factor, you know, like literally all of them, but this seems the most probable. In any case, it was probably one of the earlier relationships, so we're gonna go, Maroon was written after Harry, so I'm gonna slide Paris in like around here. Next up is High Infidelity. It was written physically somewhere between the range of March 7th and March 15th in 2021, and these dates are just from, I think, an interview Aaron Dessner did. It's about a relationship that is already rocky, so it gets ended by some form of infidelity. I'm really lazy, and I explained this too well in one of my other videos, so I'm literally just gonna play that clip here.
So the first theory is about Calvin Harris, because his song This Is What You Came For was released on April 29th, which Taylor actually was involved in writing and essentially agreed to ghostwrite for him. And then when they broke up, she was like, actually, I wrote that, which was kind of funny. And then on May 2nd, during the Met Gala, she met Tom Hiddleston, and this is them cozying up at the Met Gala. So some people think this might be referencing this situation, but since the Met Gala actually happened on May 2nd, there's some doubt that remains there. There's also the theory that she met Joe Alwyn at the Met Gala, and that's what this is talking about, not Tom Hiddleston. But again, we have the problem of this Met Gala happening on May 2nd. What did happen on April 29th? Gigi Hadid's 21st birthday party. It was held a week after her birthday on that particular time. Here is literal evidence. And here is a deleted Reddit comment, which, as we all know, is the greatest kind of evidence one can have. So that says, I actually thought High Infidelity was about Joe. She actually met Joe at Gigi's birthday party on April 29th. And while we don't know for sure, I think that she definitely met somebody at this party. Either it was Tom Hiddleston or it was about Joe. And I think it was most likely more about Joe, because the song that everybody took for being about Joe, because she says, flashback when you met me, your buzz cut and my hair bleached. Everybody always uses the Met Gala photos as the reference for when they met. But if they had met just 3 days earlier, we really wouldn't know, because they'd have the same buzz cut and Taylor's hair would still be bleached just like it was at this birthday party. So that's my / this Reddit user's personal theory. I don't think it was talking about the Met Gala. I think it was talking about Gigi's birthday party.
Okay, we're gonna have to do some rearranging, so bear with me. I think we're gonna move these up and slide High Infidelity right in here, because since that was probably before the Cruel Summer, but Next up is glitch. It refers to a glitch where romance happened when it shouldn't have or was improbable, hence it was a glitch. She says, we were supposed to be just friends. You don't live in my part of town, but maybe I'll see you out some weekend. Like I mentioned prior, this is not something that seems like it would be common in Taylor's romantic life past high school, but there are a few candidates. The lyric nights are so starry, blood moonlit, it must be counterfeit include space references and a counterfeit reference, both of which were used in songs about Matty on the Torture Poets Department. Furthermore, 2,190 days of love blackout is equal to 6 years. A love blackout probably refers to a time where this love was non-existent. It could be saying that it was a love blackout in the sense that she was fully focused on this love and nothing else. But looking at the way her 6-year relationship panned out and the structure of the lyric, this isn't likely, I don't think. This makes much more sense with an old fling and the phrasing that, love blackout, there was no love happening during that time. And coincidentally, 2015 to 2021 is exactly 6 years. Matty and Taylor ended their fling in 2015 and then properly reconnected again in 2021 by working on Midnights together. A fun coincidence that could indicate that this isn't about the 6-year relationship. The song also has some straight up references to an old flame, which kind of solidifies this. She says, I was supposed to sweat you out and I thought we had no chance, which wouldn't make sense with Joe. She also says, maybe I'll see you out in town some weekend, which can also be interpreted as a reference to London, where she lived with Joe, where Matty also happened to live at the same time. Actually, he even somewhat lived in her part of town. Anyway, this song is about someone from a long time ago that she is imagining reconnecting with or has reconnected with, and that sounds familiar. And she's not even sorry about it, also implying that she has a reason to be because she was maybe in a relationship. So we're gonna put this near snow on the beach. Which one do I think came first? I think I like this order. I think this is fine. Moving on to would've, could've, should've. This was also physically written in the March 7th to 15th writing session in 2021, but it has the lyric, and I damn sure never would have danced at the devil at 19. At 19, she was in a relationship with John Mayer when he was 32, and the whole song is essentially about how that was an entirely horrible experience that should never have happened. In fact, it was so bad that it haunts her to this day. Taylor was 32 in 2021, the same age as John Mayer when he dated her, which likely contributed to inspiring this song. It's kind of a grown-up version of Dear John, where a main lyric says you should have known, which is an interesting parallel. And so this is going into 2010 when they dated. Dear Reader is advice from someone who's falling apart and has their 4th drink in their hand. This advice entails picking somewhere and just running and deserting all past lives. Essentially, Taylor's saying that she's the one falling apart here and that her only choice is to keep running, abandoning places and people, and changing until she can't recognize herself anymore. She also mentions coming home to an empty house, indicating that she feels lonely, which is strange since this was written when she was with Joe, but really, is that strange looking back? Anyway, it was written about feeling especially hopeless, but it doesn't seem like it's referencing any specific event from the past, somewhat implying that this is a recent feeling. It feels more like a somber summary of her life experience than You're on Your Own, Kid, so I'm gonna place it at the very end. How about that? It's Different was written somewhere between April and October of 2021 and is about a relationship that has already ended and seems like it ended when she was younger, since she describes her coping mechanism as being going to clubs and throwing up on the street, which doesn't really fit her current image, not that it fit her past image, but then again, who knows, maybe this breakup was so bad that she started behaving more like a teenager again, and that's the whole point of that lyric. It's Different has the lyric, I used to switch out these Kens, which is a parallel to I felt more than when we played pretend than with all the Kens, because he took me out of my box from My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, which is strongly suspected to be written about Matty Healy. The lyric, rip the band-aid off and skip town like an asshole outlaw, sounds an awful lot like Cowboy Like Me or I Can Fix Him, which feel very Western in the style and lyrics, which is an interesting parallel. Freedom felt like summer then on the coast, kind of mirrors the coastal town we wandered round, had never seen a love as pure as it from Gold Rush. Strange lyric to put if this was about Matty, since what happened between them back in 2014 and 2015 was during the winter. Maybe it's about the same breakup that the Great War refers to. The key turning in the door would make sense since she lived together with Joe, or maybe the lyrics about breaking up are really about the cruel summer she had with him, but I don't think that really makes sense either. Some people have said that this could be about Calvin Harris, the club being a reference to his club music, and Each Bar Plays Our Song could literally be referring to the song they wrote together, although Taylor also uses the concept of having like an R song in The Black Dog, and it's clearly just referring to a song both of the people love in that instance, so I don't know. But there's a somewhat convincing case, since Skip Town, like in Asphalt Outlaw, could be referring to her being papped with Tom Hiddleston all over the world after her breakup with Calvin, and Freedom Felt Like Summerland on the Coast could refer to the post-Calvin breakup July 4th party, or her and Tom being papped on the beach. She also says, I slur your name till someone puts me in a car, which could then be referencing the culturally significant Getaway Car track from Reputation, where Tom was the getaway car from Calvin. But in that track, she also says about Calvin, I wanted to leave him, I needed a reason, which is definitely a different vibe from It's Different Because It's You, I Can't Get Over You. Anyways, it's definitely a fitting end to the album either way, since she asks if they've come to take her away, and to Torture Post Department opens with Fortnite, the music video of which is set in an insane asylum. She definitely did that on purpose. This, I'm not going to try and speculate about this one. There's just not enough details. I would personally place it like maybe around here, but there's just not, I genuinely don't know. Box of shame. And then finally, moving on to You're Losing Me, which was written on December 5th of 2021 when she was together with Joe, no doubt about how she felt about their relationship at the time. And this song went unreleased until they publicly broke up, at which point it was then released as a vault track. Poor Jack Antonoff, working 2 jobs as a producer and a therapist, and poor Taylor. And so that's why I have this December 2021 mark here. So I'm gonna scooch all these songs back. And yeah, it seems kind of realistic that they would have had a conflict and then made up before You're Losing Me was written.
Oh, also, it makes sense because The Great War was written in October of 2021 and You're Losing Me was written in December.
So we're gonna go with this order. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to be mean in the comments or start unnecessary conflict, I think you should at least write a juicy lyric to voice your thoughts. And let me know what I missed.